for those of you unfamiliar with High Tide, it's not a deck that we get on camera a lot. How does the deck actually win?
Well, the deck actually wins by eventually brain freezing your opponent or blue sun zenithing your opponent. Really, the idea is you just make absurd amounts of mana. You cast a card Time Spiral to redraw your entire hand. There's a bunch of these cards with these mechanics. So Time Spiral costs 6 and untaps 6 lands. After you have something like a High Tide resolving, those cards actually start producing mana.
Yeah.
So you get to the point where all your cards produce mana, and you just keep producing more until you have enough to make your opponent draw 60 or mill their whole deck.
So, you know, not a bad start for Lee. He has a turn 1 Thoughtseize, which again is probably a card that he really values in this particular matchup. Sees a hand of Flusterstorm, double Merchant Scroll, Ponder, and a High Tide along with 2 lands.
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why High Tide is pretty hard to play a Thoughtseize deck against. High Tide actually plays basically 16 cantrips if you count Merchant Scrolls as cantrip, which it more or less is. What Feline's trying to assemble is a hand of 4 lands, 4+ lands, at least only one High Tide really in this matchup, and then a Time Spiral. Every other slot eventually is going to turn into a counter spell.
And how consistently would you say the deck kind of goes off on turn 4? Is turn 4 basically the turn you think for this deck?
Turn 4 is the deck that is the turn where combo starts becoming live. You can go for it on turn 3, but turn 4 is really when you want to start comboing with the deck. This is the old school kind of combo deck where while you can go off on turn 4, you actually want to go off on the last possible turn every time.
Got it.
So if they give you till turn 6, take turn 6.
So interesting here. Feline had a Ponder and a Preordain in hand and chose not to cast either on turn 1. Why is that?
Well, she doesn't actually know what she's looking for yet. She wants to ensure she hits land drops. You can afford to be pretty greedy with your cantrips here. You know, you don't have an uncracked fetch land. She doesn't know what, think about your deck as High Tides, Spirals, and Wild Cards. And it's like, you don't necessarily want to turn your Wild Card into something yet if you don't have to.
Got it. So Lee misses a land drop, but he does have a Deathrite Shaman, so he will be able to generate 2 mana next turn if it stays in play. Feline looks like we're going to see it looks like a Ponder. So yeah, so Ponder reveals Time Spiral, Force of Will, and another island. So going to keep all those cards and draw an island, I think, for the turn.
Yeah. We see a lot of Thoughtseize action in Lee's hand. One thing, though, Feline is fine getting Thoughtseize here. We see another Thoughtseize coming out from Lee.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. There's a lot of cantrips in the deck. So it looks like it doesn't care that much. And a card like Time Spiral is huge. It's basically a 1 card that can just refill your hand.
Yeah.
So it looks like Lee's going to cast Thoughtseize. And again, we're going to see pretty much the same hand except plus a Force of Will. Minus the High Tide, so.
Yeah, so we have 2 Merchant Scrolls. Those are still wild cards. There's a Flusterstorm and a Force of Will. So what Feline's doing is she's building up toward that counterspell fight that she's anticipating.
And Flusterstorm obviously huge there.
Yeah, well, eventually all you have to do is get to, 6. Like I said, it's only one High Tide that she needs and 1 Time Spiral. And even sometimes like a High Tide and a Meditate will be enough. You just want a card drawer and a lot of mana.
Yeah, and the cool thing here is that Lee isn't able to really develop his board that much, so not really able to, because he's stuck on mana, he's not really able to develop his board that much, so he has a Jace in his hand. Looks like he also has a Vindicate, the 1 of Vindicate.
So this is the first aggressive play from Feline. She cast a Merchant Scroll, getting a High Tide. That's the first wild card, so to speak, that she's cashed in here. You know, we already know that she had drawn that Time Spiral. So now that she's found the High Tide, she has the 2 pieces she needs. She's only going to set up for more lands. And now that she has a Spiral, a Tide, a Force of Will, a Flusterstorm, and lands, she's sitting right where she wants to be.
So here's a second land for Lee, likely to see maybe a Stoneforge here or a Vindicate on the land. Maybe he thinks he needs to kind of nope, he's going to lead with Stoneforge here.
You're absolutely right on Vindicate on a land being a really strong play here. High Tide needs lands in play. If blowing up a land is actually time walking the deck, and in Lee's situation, it's a pretty good play here, actually.
Yeah, and the thing is, I haven't played this matchup at all, but I would have to imagine Stoneforge Mystic probably isn't relevant, or at least as relevant as Vindicating a Land. Obviously, Vindicating a Land isn't going to win me the game, but I can't imagine casting Stoneforge here is really going to be that relevant.
You need some win con as a Deathblade player. Like I said, if you give High Tide till turn 7, they will probably kill you every time. So you need to make sure that they can't get to turn 7, but
I think I'd rather Vindicate the land and then play a Jace next turn, hopefully. At least that gives me something to do.
That is certainly a stronger play.
Yeah. So looks like Feline's going to cast Merchant Scroll and search for a Cunning Wish here.
Yeah, so Merchant Scroll for Cunning Wish is a pretty good play here. What that allows her to do is Cunning Wish is kind of another one of the wild cards in the deck. High Tide operates out of a Wish board, so what she can do is she can use that Cunning Wish to Cunning Wish for Intuition, and then use Intuition as a tutor for any other card she may need in the deck. That's another insurance policy against discard spells. Not knowing her exact hand, I'm not sure what it is she's still looking for. But the fact that she hit her land drops, at this point she probably is fine. 5 land is about enough here.
Yeah, so she's got the High Tide. You said she's got the Time Spiral as well. But it looks like she's not going to go for it just yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing. She could have gone for it in that situation. And that certainly wouldn't have been bad. But what she is doing is she's just waiting. It's the last possible turn combo decks. There wasn't a step sort of Fire and Ice off the Stoneforge. It wasn't the Batterskull he showed her. Because that represents card draw, that might be what it takes to, kind of force her hand in saying next turn's going to be the combo turn.
And do you see Cunning Wish getting cast at the end of the turn?
Well, Cunning Wish, it depends. It depends what happens here. I don't know if she's actually missing anything. I believe she has the Spiral and the High Tide. So if she does cast it, it'll probably be for a Pact of Negation out of her board.
Got it. So Deathrite Shaman actually takes a High Tide, which is actually important because now it can't get shuffled back in because of the Time Spiral.
Exactly. Tides will be shuffled back in when... So each one that they can remove from the deck is really good. That said, because she's going for a resilient combo instead of a fast combo, she really only needs 1 High Tide. Just going to Cunning Wish on end step here. There is 1 Force of Will in Lee's deck.
Looks like Lee drew the Force of Will this turn.
Yeah. But that's the thing, High Tide is, because it's a deck with all islands, it has more counter magic. Like, if you give it until turn 7, it'll have, very consistently, it'll have a High Tide, it'll have a Spiral, and it'll have about 4 counter spells in its hand.
Yeah, so I think Feline really wants Lee to try to force this because she does have the Flusterstorm, so this would be actually perfect for her.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter either way. She can let this get countered. If all she was going to get was a Pact of Negation with it, then it's fine that he counters this. Pact of Negation, either the Cunning Wish eats a Force of Will, or the Pact that she gets eats a Force of Will.
But she can get the High Tide with the Cunning Wish now, right?
The High Tide actually is a separate exile zone, so that doesn't work anymore. So that one's in the you can't get it exile zone.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it used to be able to that you could rescue the cards that have been exiled, but that for example, you cannot Cunning Wish for Cunning Wish to build Storm anymore. That wish you just cast, that's gone.
So Lee's left with just the Vindicate, Stoneforge Mystic, and the Batterskull. But if the Stoneforge Mystic does connect, he will get another card draw.
Yeah, she went and got an Intuition, so she may be missing a piece. I don't know if she actually took that Spiral the first time around. So Intuition would suggest that she's still missing something. We see the High Tide in her hand. And yeah, an extra card draw there. Feely just found a True Name Nemesis. It doesn't find too much help.
Yeah, so you can kind of see why you would think the High Tide players favored Game 1. There are so many bad cards in Lee's hand for this particular matchup.
Batterskull, True Name.
Yeah.
There is one thing, the last thing she needs to watch out for is, you notice that all of Lee's lands are islands. Okay, High Tide affects all islands in play. So on a turn, if she has to cast Time Spiral, there's a chance, first of all, she'll give Lee a lot of mana. And if all his mana is untapped, there's a chance she'll draw him into Force of Wills again, that he can start hard casting at her post Time Spiral. So there is some incentive for her to either try to turnabout him or maybe go off when some of his lands are tapped.
Yeah, so right now, Lee only has 1 island untapped. So not a huge concern for her at this point, but yeah, I understand. I'm with you. Yeah, the fact that High Tide affects all islands is definitely something she should be concerned with.
Yeah, she can start, if she has counter spells, which she does, she can start on High Tide here. She has 6 lands. She can use, that'll be 10 mana, which is enough to Intuition 4 Time Spiral and Spiral to go ahead and start the interaction. Depending on what spells she has left over, she may even have some mana to cast some offensive counter spell.
Yeah, and do you think her concern is that if Lee fought over the Cunning Wish, then maybe he actually has a second Force of Will?
Well, she has to decide how much she can fight over. It's pretty nice to be able to combo with your opponent tapped on lands.
Wow.
Giving him another draw certainly doesn't seem very enticing, because the sword will draw 2 cards. She's going to give him 1 more turn, however.
She's going to give him 1 more turn, and he's going to draw 2 cards now. So that's really huge. Even a Thoughtseize could be pretty important here.
A Thoughtseize would be good. She has some redundancy. I think I maybe have liked going for the combo on the tap out there if she does have it. What this will give her is a lot more mana. One of the ways she can certainly navigate on her combo turn, like having spiraling with extra floating mana is really valuable.
So thankfully for Feline, Lee just drew another true name nemesis, so not too impressive of a draw here for Lee. I think he could still kind of smell that he probably needed to draw something impactful. Feline is not going to give him another turn at this point.
Yeah, he can Vindicate a land here. I actually think the right play for him is to keep all his islands untapped instead of Vindicating a land.
Oh, yeah, so he can generate the mana in case he draws. Because, again, he is going to get to draw 7 cards if the Time Spiral gets cast.
And as a kind of a veteran High Tide player, Feline is going to try to minimize the number of High Tides she casts because of how much it helps Lee.
Yeah.
But now that he's tapped out for it, we may not see that. He's going to go for a Vindicate on one of her lands. It's inconvenient for her, to be sure, but 6 is a pretty big number. A High Tide player is comfortable comboing on 4 lands.
Well, plus she can actually cast Intuition at the end of Lee's turn now, so she's not going to have to use 3 mana on her turn as she would have last turn. So she still should have more mana than she would have had available last turn.
Yep, so Intuition, this is going to be used as a tutor, you see, for Time Spiral, Time Spiral, Time Spiral. Always giving your opponent options with Intuition.
So Time Spiral is to the hand, and Vindicate should resolve here dealing with the island.
Yeah. Her ideal draw this turn actually could be another land. She's going to Brainstorm on end step here. You see she's found another Force of Will. And this is the power of High Tide. She's got the Spiral, she's got the Tide, she's got a Force of Will. Just going to continue having lots of really strong blue cards, like offensive counter spells. She's actually found another Spiral. That certainly isn't any help.
Yeah, so it looks like basically next turn you imagine she's going to go High Tide, Time Spiral with Force of Will backup, and then that's when the party begins.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The fact that Lee has tapped 3 of his islands is great for her. It means she can actually start casting a bunch of she can cast additional High Tides if she finds them, and any Force of Wills that Lee draws will not be very effective here.
So still debating what she wants to put on top of her library. I think she wants to know whether or not she can afford to go off with less than just 5 mana. Because, yeah, it looks like she's going to get rid of the Flooded Strand. That's going to be the second to bottom card there, or second to top card.
Yeah, she actually likes her draw for the turn. She's going to go ahead and redraw that. And now this is the turn. She's at 4. She can't take another hit. Deathrite's going to put her to 2 right now.
Yeah, so she actually, she actually can't. Yeah,
can't crack Flooded Strand.
Yeah, that's important. She can't crack Flooded Strand because if she wants Force of Will as a backup.
Right, and that is a little bit of an unfortunate. That is unfortunate for her. There's no life gain in her deck, so she's actually more or less doing a 4-land combo here.
Yep.
So you see that dive, which she's placed. Feline's keeping track of how much mana islands are currently tapping for. So the number is islands tapped for 2. 1 High Tide has resolved.
Yeah, so not going off last turn basically cost her 4 mana.
Yeah, it's going to cost her 4 mana. Like I said, 4 lands is easy enough to go off using, and I think that's just what we'll see her do. She has a Spiral, a Force of Will, 2 other cards. If she had extra mana, she could afford to start going through some cantrips to try to get some additional value here. I said there's the worry if she cracks that Flooded. She's debating between what's more important, Force of Will or Flooded Strand.
Yeah, because basically if she cracks the Flooded Strand, she really can't afford to use any of the Force of Wills that she draws off. So if Lee draws a Force of Will, she can't force back.
Yeah, if she had a second High Tide, this decision would be easy. She'd go ahead and just go down to 3. She does not, though, so it's going to be Time Spiral, it looks like. Force of Will, Time Spiral. All right, that's going to be cast.
And Lee gives the thumbs up, it looks like, so it should resolve.
Yeah, she's made this combo turn a little more difficult for herself than it needed to be. Granted that because of that, I think she felt far enough ahead that she was like, she's still not in a tight situation, and she was playing around a lot of things that Lee didn't have. You know, she was playing as though he had a fist of counter magic.
Yeah.
Which I think is really the correct way to play Time Spiral. It's a combo deck for people who like safe combos.
Yeah, you don't want to expose yourself too much. I mean, Ant, Oops, all spells, those are decks where people just don't care what your opponent's doing.
Yeah, you're like, well, I hope you don't have it. No, High Tide's like, well, I hope you have everything, and I'll just slowly answer them all.
Yeah, High Tide, Show and Tell, they both kind of seem like a little more resilient, robust combo decks that you know, maybe they give up a little speed, but they're not nearly as exposed to just a singular force of will or a ley line of sanctity like we saw in prior matches with Storm.
So because she's a little limited on mana, this is not 100% a win here. It's certainly a strong. Both players are going to redraw 7 cards. And there's 1 island for her, so that's going to be helpful. We see a lot of mana from Feline, 2 high tides and a candlestick.
Look at that 7 cards from Lee.
Bunch of
multiple swords to plowshares, deathrite shamans, and land.
All right, so he's got nothing. He's F6, you could say.
And yeah, it looks like Feline played a land for the turn.
Yep. She tapped that one for 2. It's going to be the first one is for a high tide. The second one is for a candlestick.
And Lee's had enough.
Wow, and that is I'll say that is premature on Lee's part.
Well, I think the viewers at home thank Lee for not having.
No. What I'm saying is, you need to first see, like, she's got a lot of mana, sure, but if there's a chance her hand is just, if your hand is just candlesticks, high tides, and islands.
Oh yeah, you
that's
definitely.
Nothing. You want to make her
at least cast a time spiral.
Once you see Cunning Wish, then you're done, because then she's gonna get Blue Sun Zenith herself for 15. Yeah. Then we're done. But I actually think you need to wait there. You need to wait a little longer until you see something. Or at least I wouldn't have scooped just yet.
Yeah, it's definitely, if Reed Duke is watching this, he's furious that Lee scooped that quickly. No, you definitely don't scoop that quickly, but you know, you kind of saw the writing on the walls. But I'm with you. Even if she casts Time Spiral there, he still gets another 7. Like, that's actually what she ends up doing. She didn't have the Cunning Wish or a Zenith, so that's actually what ends up happening.
She was at, you know, between that candlestick and the 2 more high tides she'd drawn, she was at infinite mana time. You know, you can basically, she's got all the mana she wants. You just need to make, like I said, 1 Cunning Wish is enough to scoop off of at that point. But I'd make her have that.
But hey, if the next 7 card hand is you know, a bunch of candelabras, high tides, land, and a Time Spiral, and Lee just has 1 Force of Will, he wins, right?
Yeah, well, the ideal thing is that Feline won't cast another Time Spiral, if at all possible. She'll hope to just Cunning Wish for Blue Sun Zenith her whole deck, make a bunch of mana with candlesticks, turnabout untap the candlesticks, make more mana, and Zenith Lee for 60. The idea is you only want to spiral when absolutely necessary because of exactly what you talked about. It is possible to get those hands that just don't win after Time Spiral.
Yeah, so fortunately, Feline wins the first game, moves on to 1-0 in this match, and Lee is going to have to start bringing in some of those sideboard cards that he has for this matchup. And, you know, it looks like he's got a lot of cards that actually can come in here. He's got 3 Rest in Peace, 2 Aethersworn Canonist, 2 Meddling Mage, 1 Flusterstorm, 1 Notion Thief, 1 Python Needle, 1 Vendilion Click, a Detention for Zealous Persecution. Obviously,
a lot of good options.
Canonist, Meddling Mage, Flusterstorm, Vendilion Click, those are cards that I think are probably surefire bets.
Rest in Peace, Notion Thief. No, let's just get the whole sideboard in.
Yeah, I
think.
Rest in Peace, it's really tough for the high tide player to go off through Rest in Peace, right? Just because you Time Spiral. It kind of shuts off your Time Spiral, right?
It can. And what it means is you only get 4 high tides to work with.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, because Esper Deathblade players do have the ability to play Surgical Extraction, Feline's going to take 1 of her 4 high tides and move it into her wish board so that she can't get all her high tides extracted here. So no matter what, you know, but she only gets 4. She gets 4 high tides to work with for them if he gets a Rest in Peace down.
How good is Notion Thief?
I mean, she can't get.
Okay.
It's more than okay.
Well, that's my point. If it resolves, is it basically like the Stoneblade?
She plays Snap.
So, but no, like in response to like a Time Spiral.
Oh yeah, you can't win. You can't win. Now, to be fair, in this matchup, her game plan isn't to spiral quickly. It's to spiral with a hand full of Pact of Negation. Okay. So, in the situation that she plays a Time Spiral and he throws down Notion Thief, she's probably got a Pact of Negation for it.
Okay.
But if you just turn forward the Notion Thief, say, hey, hands up, yeah, Notion Thief. That's very problematic for her because it means that instead of going forward with her plan, she's going to have to snap Notion Thief or wipe away Notion Thief. She's going to have to find work to get that thing off the board before she combos. She can't actually win through it.
She does have 4 Defense Grid. That's basically the only redundant non-wish target in her sideboard. Does that come in this matchup?
Yeah, I would assume that Defense Grid's going to come in the matchup. Deathblade's a little touchier because it doesn't have that many reactive spells. It actually goes on a somewhat of a discard plan. But yeah, if she has Defense Grids in the board, then she'll probably bring them in here. High Tide actually only gets about 5 or 6 cards in the sideboard. The other 9 have to go to the wish board. So sometimes you'll see Grafdigger's Cage. Sometimes you'll see Defense Grid. Sometimes you'll actually just see more Pact of Negations. She's playing 2 right now. But yeah, I do think it is here for this matchup.
All right, so both players have presented. We're going to see an opening 7 here. Let's see if Lee can get, you know, obviously he tried to board out as many of the dead cards as possible, but it's hard because there are so many cards in his main deck that are probably not really good in this matchup.
Yeah. To be fair, the cards I think that matter are like Liliana of the Veil is pretty good. I actually really do like Vindicate in this matchup, even though he drew it that game and wasn't unable to cast.
So Lee, they're both happy with their opening 7, and Lee leads with a Deathrite Shaman, but he doesn't have a sack land currently, so it looks like it won't be able to generate mana. And there's a Pithing Needle, so Candelabra.
Yeah, that is the only card you can name with it, so it's going to be Candelabra. We see not too much disruption in Lee's hand. Remember, the high-type Feline doesn't actually have to do anything here. She just needs to make about 4 or 5 land drops and cast a High Tide and a Time Spiral.
And yeah, Lee does have a Forcible, but I don't think he has another blue card to pitch to it currently.
Suggesting Candelabra Taunos is named.
And Deathrite swings for 1. Something you don't see very often on turn 2.
One thing you may want to know is against heavy discard decks, high-type players actually board out their Candelabras.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it's good at making mana, but it's just a ritual. And when you want, when it's all about keeping card quality in your hand, it's kind of like discarding. It's discarding a card. It's actually one of the few cards in the deck that is not a cantrip. So if you're just playing to make lands and get counter spells and not combo fast, there's not that much need for Candelabra.
Yeah. This reminds me a lot of Desire, which a deck I love to play back in the day.
This deck is loads of fun. The reason I like playing it is that it's always my turn when I'm playing, which that's my favorite part of Magic. When it's your turn, I'm having less fun. So,
wow, so Lee does not draw a blue card. He draws a Creeping Tar Pit to go along with the one he has in his hand. Still no sack land, so he can't ramp yet, but...
he actually can't. He has a Stonebridge Mystic in his hand that he can't cast either because he has no white.
So this is a fairly awkward situation here. Yeah, you rarely ever see Deathrite not being able to get activated.
Yeah, and you see with Feline's hand, she has the High Tide that she scrolled for. She also has a Flusterstorm. One of the things that's unique to Feline Longmore's build of High Tide compared to probably the other 7 or 8 people that play High Tide is she's very bullish on Flusterstorm. She plays a full 3 in the main deck and a 4th in the sideboard.
So Lee draws a Ethersworn Canonist, a card very good in this matchup.
Excellent.
Unfortunately, it requires you to be able to cast it, which he currently cannot.
And how amusing is it that Feline also has not cracked a fetch land for it?
Yeah, literally, Deathrite Shaman has been in play since turn 1 and has yet to remove a land in the graveyard to generate mana.
Yeah, if she has it, you may see Feline go for a turn 4 kill here. Her opponent's tapped out. The only card that would matter in his deck right now is Force of Will.
Yeah, and plus the fact that he has no white mana in play, you could get the sense that maybe he has a couple of white cards in his hand that are really clogged there because he can't cast them, which would be unreasonable to assume. So, yeah, let's see what Feline does in her turn.
Her draw for the turn is Cunning Wish. If she has a Spiral to go with that Tide, she could go 4th land and just simply go 4th land Spiral Tide. If she has 2 Tides, she could go Tide Spiral. Or perhaps something like Tyro, and maybe even she has some mana producers, but she's going to play it safe, cast Defense Grid.
So Defense Grid comes down here. Thing about Defense Grid and Force of Will, though, as long as he keeps 3 mana up, he still should be able to cast it. And wow, there we go, a Wasteland.
so if he wastes himself,
and I think
he can get white mana. How gross. What it will do is it will give him Aethersworn Canonist, which she's going to have to bounce.
I think you have to kind of get your white mana in play and get that Canonist in play.
Yeah, that's...
And now he can equip it with Sword, and it can't be targeted by any blue spell?
Yeah, that's huge. She's going to need a Force of Will promptly. Well, so here's the thing. She actually does have an answer to what's going on here. They'd play... One of the Wishboard targets is Rebuild.
Rebuild, yes, Rebuild doesn't target, right?
Rebuild intentionally does not target so that it gets around things like Mother of Runes. And you know that she drew that Cunning Wish there, so that is immediately what she's going to go after.
So Lee is ecstatic. He's juggling his cards like
Can't possibly
like a maniac.
lose.
Ecstatic. He's got a pro-blue Ethersworn Canonist against a high-tide player. He's got to be feeling good.
Remember, I know I've said this to death. If you give them until turn 7, High Tide is going to combo you. You can play all the hate cards you want. They're going to combo you.
He is reading the card along with all of our viewers at home. Rebuild, 1 blue, 2 colors, return all artifacts to owner's hand. That does not target. So Lee will get 2 draw steps here at least. I'm not sure Feline has enough to really go off next turn.
Yeah, the debate between Rebuild and cards like Hurgle's Recall, they're both pretty similar in the deck. Rebuild can cycle, so it lets you can get it proactively. Another reason to play is it actually can bounce your own candlesticks for additional mana of your own. Here it's going to be a little weak because it will bounce Feline's own defense grid.
So big turn here. Thoughtseize draw from Lee. So he's going to be able to see. Yeah, and I agree with you. That defense grid is actually, it looks like it's hurting Feline more than it's hurting Lee.
Yeah, she could have Flusterstormed there. That wouldn't have done anything. He's going to have to take the Rebuild.
Well, the real problem is that she can't cast Rebuild at the end of the turn.
Right. So she couldn't end of turn Cunning Wish Rebuild.
Yeah, so...
Well, that actually wouldn't work because of Aethersworn Canonist. She only can play one spell anyway.
Well, no, I mean, Rebuild's an instant, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so ideally you'd want to cast Cunning Wish at the end of the turn, untap, pass, and then cast Rebuild at the end of Lee's turn.
Right.
And then try to go off on your turn, which you can't do because of defense grid.
Right, and we see in her hand there's also Snap. Now, once again, that pro-blue sword is going to go ahead and get around that.
Yeah,
and
so that...
This is problematic because he's going to be able to Deathrite Shaman the Rebuild too.
So she has no outs to that.
Well, she can. She has Wipe Away as well, so she can wipe away the sword and snap the Aethersworn Canonist.
The problem is that he's basically attacking for 6 each turn, so there's simply just not enough time.
There may not be enough time for her to pull that one off. And I think one of the things you're right that's hurting her is I don't particularly think the defense grid has been helpful for her here.
Yeah, it's definitely been a detriment to her.
Yeah, when she had a hand full with Force of Will and Flusterstorm, I don't know if defense grid was the right play to be making, even though it is good in this matchup.
Yeah, and
that will be a game for Lee Prost.
So, yep, Lee wins this game. Despite not having any white mana for the first 4 turns of the game, he finally gets there by drawing a Wasteland of all lands. So Lee Prost shows the strength of Sword and Fire Ice on an Aethersworn Canonist. And given how how that game went, do you see the defense grid staying in here, or do you see them possibly coming out?
They're still good. I think. Remember that a lot of the cards, and so her combo is actually just lands plus about 2 cards. So her hand during the game actually has a lot of extra cards in it. We saw there, she had a Snap in her hand. She had that Cunning Wish, which she could burn off for Rebuild. A lot of her extra card slots are very reactive. So if she has a defense grid and just happens to be a situation where she doesn't want to play defense grid, that's very similar to having a situation where we had there, she had Snap but didn't really want to play Snap. Mm-hmm. And I think it's okay to have the defense grid. You can play it. You can also not play it.
Mm. So looks like Lee is comfortable with how he's sideboarded. It doesn't look like he's making any changes. Feline, though, looking through her 15, looks like she's comfortable too. So both players are shuffling up. And I mean, again, defense grid seemed bad that game, but I could understand how you probably need it in general for the match. It allows you to not have to worry about Force of Will. Although, given how many instants she has, it seems like it's kind of I don't know, it seems some counterintuitive at some point, but, I totally understand why it could be useful.
Yeah, the swap's pretty easy for her. It's just -4 Candelabra plus 4 defense grid.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, Feline is in the play here. It looks like she's okay with her 7. Lee is okay as well, so we're off to the races. Turn 1 Island, and is that a Preordain?
It is. Yep, Preordain's probably one of the better ones to lead off of. She's going to go double top and draw. Should be concerning for Lee.
Yeah. So Lee's going to sack a Marsh Flask. I think he had a Thoughtseize in his hand. So let's see.
Interesting thing about High Tide is that's a deck that's very reluctant to mulligan. Every card is a cantrip, so your 7-card hands just stay 7-card hands. When you mulligan to 6, you can't ever really recoup that card. So your idea of sculpting the perfect hand, suddenly your perfect hand is just going to be -1 card when you mulligan.
Yeah, it certainly seems like one of those decks that probably mulligans really well, or rather doesn't mulligan.
It just doesn't mulligan.
Yeah.
Every hand is just, all the hands are the same. They're all cantrips.
So Lee does, in fact, have a Thoughtseize, and wow, look at this hand. Looks like it's 4 lands, Ponder, and Flusterstorm. So you were right. The deck doesn't need to mulligan very often.
This hand's fine. 5 lands is probably what she wanted to combo off on anyway. The worry here is that she'll draw more lands naturally. The good news is that Brainstorm fixes that problem fairly easily in conjunction with the fetch land she has.
Yeah, and she did keep the 2 cards on top of her library, so the card on top of her library currently is probably live. And yep, looks like she kept a hand of 5 lands, Preordain, and Flusterstorm.
Yep, she's just gonna have to find the combo pieces. One question will be how fast Lee's clock can be.
And Lee's got a pretty good hand. He's got a turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, and it looks like he's got a Liliana the Veil too.
Liliana is an issue for the High Tide deck. One of the ways she plays around Liliana is just by making land drops. You hope to get up to 6 lands, and then you just somehow get a time spiral on top, and you just top deck it and cast. Granted, when Lee has counter spells, that's a harder thing to make sure that it would work. You wouldn't have any defensive counter magic.
So Lee goes for the Sword of Fire and Ice, and that makes me suspect that he's going to go turn 3 Liliana Veil, and then turn 4 activate Stoneforge, and play a Deathrite in the same turn, plus with Brainstorm. So let's see here.
Merchant Scroll cast for Feline. I think in her position, she's got to decide how much time she has. She might feel that there's a quick clock. Certainly once Liliana's cast, she's going to feel that way. Her ideal thing would just be to get combo pieces as opposed to control.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting here. On Lee's turn, he has the decision. He could go 3 mana Liliana, or he could actually play a 3rd land, Deathrite Shaman, and then activate Stoneforge at the end of Feline's turn to put the sword into play. But, the question is, what is more relevant right here? Is it Liliana, or is it getting a sword into play?
And you see exactly that take place here. Feline debated about taking Force of Will, went back, found High Tide with the Merchant Scroll. Instead, she's gonna go for a fast kill.
So Lee draws a Brainstorm. So he's got 2 copies of Brainstorm now. He has a Wasteland in his hand, and I believe he has a Flooded Strand as well. So he does have access to double black if he chooses to get the Liliana.
Yeah. He does have no disruption at the moment. So if Feline can just cast a 4th land and Tide Spiral or do something similar to that, she's in a great spot.
Yeah, so Lee, I think, kind of feels that is important. So he's going to cast Brainstorm and try to find more disruption. And Feline wisely casts Flusterstorm to counter it.
That's great. If she's going for Tide into Spiral next turn, she's not going to have time for the Flusterstorm anyway. Countering that Brainstorm, if you look at Lee's hand, that was huge. That forces now he can't make Liliana. His only real play is to put that sword on the battlefield.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think he's probably going to cast Brainstorm again, because if he was willing to do it the first time, he kind of needs to dig here. Especially if Feline countered it, he's got to think something's up. So I don't think he can afford to really do anything other than cast Brainstorm, particularly if Feline tries to go off.
Question will be to see whether or not she determines this is the turn. We know she has a 5th land. She has 4 cards. One of them is High Tide.
Yeah, and it's interesting here. Lee does have 2 mana up. So like you said, High Tide affects all players. So this could be a situation where if she casts multiple High Tides, he will have access to potentially 6 mana.
If she goes for Tide Spiral here, he'll have mana on the untap. He'll have a chance to find a Force of Will, first of all. And he'll have mana on the untap. So she'll be navigating a bit of a minefield. Looks like she's gonna take 1 more turn here. That's Merchant Scroll. That means she's setting up for a turn 5.
And Merchant Scroll does in fact resolve here.
Question is if she's still looking for a combo piece. She can find.
Yeah, we don't know that she has the time spiral.
She can find Meditate. It's a poor man's time spiral, but it still does the trick a lot of the time. And I think that's what she's looking at right now.
So Meditate 1 blue, 2 colorless, draws 4 cards.
Yeah.
So
no drawback in the deck. There isn't. Well, in some matchups there's no drawback, and sometimes you actually cast it and lose your next turn. The drawback is you lose your next turn. The idea is that there isn't a next turn when you cast it.
Yeah. So a Tempest card back in the day. Academy decks used to play it. Basically, if you're going off that turn, it's effectively just 3 mana, draw 4 cards.
It's pretty good resource conversion.
Not the worst.
Opportunities he's playing. That one costs 6 for the same effect.
So Lee here looks like he's debating whether or not he wants to Brainstorm or just activate Stoneforge to get that sword in play. And it looks like he is going to activate it. So he's going to find an Underground Sea likely. So he has access to double black in case that Liliana is going to be important. And it looks like he goes for a Scrubland instead. So he has Scrubland, Underground Sea. He's going to tap 2, probably to activate Stoneforge and put that Sword of Fire Ice in play.
He can put into play. There's going to be a question of whether or not he wants to equip the Stoneforge with the sword or just make Liliana. Making Liliana might actually be the more threatening play right now. I think attacking Feline's hand may be better than drawing more cards of his own. It is close though.
It is and just for the viewers at home, that sword is not on the Stoneforge Mystic.
No, Stoneforge does not do that.
What? Hello. That is not on the Stoneforge Mystic.
Oh! Now, we'll see what the resolution is there. I believe he actually has
He
to
has to
attack with
attack.
the Stoneforge.
That was fantastic.
That is a break, quite a break for
Quite
Feline.
a break for Feline here. Instead of taking 3 and drawing and having their opponent draw a card, she only takes 1 here. So
Squire does his squirely duty. Hits in for 1.
dodge the bullet there. Let's see here. So Lee's going to cast Brainstorm, and we see a Vendilion Click, Inquisition, and a land. So pretty good Brainstorm there. He has some disruption, which he desperately needed.
Yeah, the IOK is easily the most important card here. He's looking at Liliana and IOK. It's got to be IOK.
Yeah. Especially because Feline went for a Meditate last turn.
He is debating. Yeah, this shouldn't be a debate. You have to take the targeted spell. So we'll see what she's working with. Inquisition of Kozilek has cast. It's going to reveal a land, so we have 2 lands, I believe. A Meditate and a High Tide. So the land-heavy hand getting no help here. I mean, it'll be Meditate that's taken.
Yeah, you can't not take Meditate. So now she basically needs to just draw what? Time Spiral?
She can, if she draws Time Spiral, she's great. She can draw a cantrip. Actually, if she draws Merchant Scroll, she's fine. She can go High Tide, Merchant Scroll, Time Spiral with 5 lands. That's possible. The scary one will be if she draws something like Ponder. Because if she wants to combo, she's going to almost probably have to High Tide before pondering.
And looks like she didn't draw anything. It looks like she might have passed back. And that is, in fact, what she did. So draws nothing for the turn that allow her to go off. And Lee just drew a Wasteland for a turn, but he still has a Vendilion Click, and he has a Liliana the Veil.
Yeah.
So Vendilion Click probably the more relevant threat here.
It's close. Because he has no counter spells, he's right now in danger of Feline just drawing Time Spiral. And if she just draws and casts Time Spiral, that will still probably win. So the Vendilion Click, while it gets rid of the High Tide, is actually a little scary because he doesn't particularly, giving her a new card isn't a freebie.
Yeah, so Lee made a slight error there, I think. He forgot that the Batterskull was still on top of his library from the Brainstorm, so he probably wanted to sack that Marsh Flask to get a free card because obviously Batterskull is not really going to be relevant here.
Yeah, so now he has a choice of 3 mana spells. He's going to go for Vendilion Click, not Liliana, and we see 1 more card drawn by Feline.
So this is huge for him because obviously if Feline casts High Tide, he can respond by casting Vendilion Click and basically just take the Time Spiral.
Yeah, well, we don't know if she has the Spiral yet.
Yeah, if she top decked it, rather.
Right. And no help there, so she drew a 3rd card and just passed back. I'm guessing we're going to get to see what her hand looks like.
Yeah, do you take the High Tide even if you cast kill?
Depends what the other card is.
Yeah.
If it's High Tide land, no.
Looks like it's High Tide land and X. No. So yeah, right now, really good position for Lee. He basically has Feline on a 2-turn clock, plus he has Liliana the Veil in his hand. So Feline's going to sacrifice both the Flooded Strands.
Yeah, the idea here is that she doesn't want to draw another land. She really just gets this 1 top deck anyway. So by cracking these, removes lands from her deck. Because she's going to get a redraw from the Vendilion Click.
Yeah, so she has 6 mana. So again, if she top decks Time Spiral, she can just cast it. Doesn't need to net mana necessarily.
Tide and Flusterstorm are among her cards. We'll see the 3rd one in a second. She's going to, she's going to go for a combo here, or something. She's going to go ahead and cast High Tide right now. So this is with the Vendilion Click on the stack.
So is this, what could this be here?
She actually has the Blue Sun Zenith in the main. She's going to go ahead and Zenith targeting herself. That is 10 mana. That's a draw 7 right now.
Wow.
That's huge. This is
huge.
There. And by moving that Blue Sun to the main deck, that's normally played out of the sideboard. That is a next level play right there.
So now she has 8 cards in her hand, I believe.
Vendilion Clicks, yeah, that's fine.
And it looks like she does have a Candelabra, so she still has a Candelabra in her hand. And she casts Brainstorm as well, so now she can hide actually something sweet.
Yeah, so a bunch of lands. Okay, not going to keep those.
And I think she showed the Blue Sun Zenith too. So
yeah,
she
redrew. She shuffled the Blue Sun Zenith in, and so she didn't Blue Sun Zenith for 7. She Blue Sun for 6 so that she could cast a Brainstorm. It looks like. Then in order to hide her best card. So I believe her hand was Brainstorm Zenith. Really heads-up play there, though.
Yeah,
That was
so,
excellent.
I think the click is still on the stack, so maybe she's considering that she wants to force a will it. So, yep, it looks like Vendilion Click did resolve here. And now we're going to see a hand of Flusterstorm, Blue Sun Zenith, and Time Spiral. 2 Sensei's Divining Tops,
Yep.
and the Candelabra, along with an island.
Sensei's Divining Top, that's another one of the unique ones to Feline's High Tide list. There are a couple other players who play some number of them. One of the debates is whether or not it's better or worse than other cantrips in the deck. For example, instead of playing 4 Preordain, Feline plays 2 Preordain, 2 Divining Top. And suddenly with all the fetch lands, Divining Top's powerful in the deck. And in the end, it is still a cantrip. It replaces itself.
So Lee's got a tough decision here. Looks like Time Spiral's probably got to be the card, right?
Well, so yeah, you think Time Spiral needs to be the card. There's a problem that Feline put 2 cards on top of her deck. So you're not even sure by switching this card if you're helping her. Like, my guess is that one of these top 2 cards is another Time Spiral. It's the only reason Feline would leave a Spiral in her hand for him to take is if she was going to draw another.
So Lee needs a little help here. He still has that Stoneforge Mystic in play. That can attack for 3, plus the click, that's 6. Draws just a Tropical Island for the turn. He's going to get another draw with that Sword of Fire Ice. Yep.
Gets back over to the middle of the battlefield.
So it looks like looks like he's gonna cast Liliana before the attack, which I'm not sure why he would do that, but Liliana comes down here.
The plus on Liliana is pretty weak here. Feline did draw 7. She certainly will have extra lands.
Yeah, I think you still want to kind of draw first. Like, you might as well attack with the Stoneforge.
Sure, to get more information, absolutely.
Yeah. Not only that, but if you attack with Stoneforge first, and
might draw something really good.
Yeah, if you draw Ethersworn Canonist, you can cast Canonist and equip it, which obviously was huge for you. So I think Lee kind of missequenced here a little bit. Probably should have just attacked first, drawn a card, gained more information as to what you're going to draw for the turn. It'd be pretty unfortunate if he draws Ethersworn Canonist and doesn't have mana to protect it with the sword. But either way, Canonist is going to be good. But nope, he draws a Force of Will. He has no blue card to pitch to it. And oh wow, he actually taps a mana to cast Deathrite Shaman, and that's huge because now High Tide means he only has 4 mana instead of 5, instead of 6.
4, maybe
rather.
6. The big thing is when Feline has as many lands as she has now, she doesn't even need High Tide before going off. She just needs to cast a Time Spiral.
So there's a Snap, Force of Will, and is that a High Tide?
It is a
it
High
is one of
Tide.
those alt art High Tides. So pretty good top there.
Well, it depends on whether or not Feline did have that extra Time Spiral when she was done Zenithing.
We don't know what the top 2 cards were.
If she did, this is great. I don't think she can miss from here. I mean, she can. That can always miss, but she's got a great setup.
Well, she still has a Zenith, right? She has a Zenith in her hand as well.
So she hid the Zenith there. Zenith is good, but it's not actually, Spiral's probably better because of Spiral's ability to make mana. I'm just going to go, and yeah, you can tell with the confidence that she's got something here. It's going to start with a High Tide, and hang on, there's going to be a lot of mana incoming.
Yeah, so she's got the Candelabra as well. So and she's got Snap too. So Snap will generate some mana as well.
Yeah, so 8 mana off her islands there. She cast a Candelabra, cast High Tide, and then it was 7 floating. She's going to go ahead and untap all her lands. That will be 1 mana remaining in the mana pool.
So 1 mana remaining.
No, that should be all her mana. She had 7. She untapped 7.
So Blue Sun Zenith here, 2, 4, 6, 8 mana. Looks like she might just draw 5 cards here.
That will be a draw for 5. I think what she's trying to do when she let the Spiral go away is I don't think she actually wanted to cast Spiral. Like I said, one of the things that they want to try to cast Spiral as little as possible. This is an interesting decision right now, how much she wants to Zenith for.
So she's leaving 3 islands up and potentially 6 mana to only Spiral here for 2, 4, 6, 8, so for 5. So this is, a Blue Sun Zenith for 5. Netting her just 5 cards here. She knows what 2 of them are. She knows what 3 of them are. She knows it's a Top, Snap, and a Force of Will.
Yeah, she's actually left. She has some additional mana as well. She gets 2 more mana off the Snap. And she'll get 2 more mana for every High Tide she finds before doing any of those.
The question is, though, does she have more gas? I mean, she's going to draw 5 cards. We know the 3 cards on top of her library are in gas, so it's basically the 2 cards beneath it.
It looks like she's only casting Blue Sun for 4. She's floating 1 mana in her mana pool here.
Interesting. So let's see. Oh, yeah, we still don't know exactly what her hand is. Looks like it's a snap forcible. Those are the snap forcible top that we knew of. So yeah, do you think? Yeah, if she doesn't have any more gas, I wonder why she's playing this conservatively.
Yeah, my
Lee
guess.
just has 2 cards in his hand.
My hunch is that she knows her cards here. Were, you know, don't she's playing this safe enough as though she just has a plan. She's trying to just generate extra mana. If she's trying to generate extra mana right now, and she say, for example, already has a spiral in hand, what she'd want to do here is she's just going to try to make as much mana as she can before spiraling.
Yeah.
Snap will go ahead and bounce a creature, untap 2 lands. So that's a nice interaction where it makes mana.
Did she untap too many lands?
She had.
Because it only untaps 2 lands, right? I'm not sure.
Where she had 3 lands untapped.
Okay.
Then she tapped 1 to make 2 mana, and then untapped 2. So now she has 4 up.
All right, so 8 mana, and there's Time Spiral with 2 mana floating.
Exactly. She wisely cast the top out of her hand before. So there are 2 mana floating in the mana pool, and this is going to be our first Time Spiral. With a full 6 lands to untap, this is a pretty good situation for Feline to be in.
Yeah, she's going to get 7 cards. She has 12 mana available to her. She's got a top in play.
The top is really big. It really helps her to not brick here. So instead of having a 7-card hand, she basically has a 10-card hand to work with. The way you generally brick with this sort of high tide is by not finding any card drawers. Mana shouldn't be too much of a concern for her.
So Lee still has outs here. Obviously, Feline can brick, and he can draw a couple of counter spells here. Doesn't have that. He does have a Flusterstorm. He also has a Notion Thief, which again, he has high tide affects everyone, and it looks like he did in fact draw a Notion Thief. So let's see if
he does have the mana for it as well.
Yeah, let's see. Because of the high tide affecting all players. So
yeah. However, Feline does have a Force of Will on top of her deck, and she's gonna start with a Defense Grid.
Oh wow! I think he might have. Oh no, he doesn't have Force of Will. He just has Flusterstorm and Brainstorm. So.
And Feline has a pretty good lockdown here. If Lee tries to stop this defense grid will lock Lee out of the game. If he tries to stop the defense grid, she can remove cards with top and draw Force of Will and Force of Will his spell.
Yeah, and it looks like she's got one in her hand as well.
Okay, she's got him covered. This is his last opportunity to cast spells.
Yeah, and honestly, Lee is probably kicking himself for casting that Deathrite Shaman, because not only did it give Feline a target for the snap, the other target would have been a Vendilion Click. Plus, he would have had 6 mana up, so he would have been able to cast Brainstorm and Flusterstorm and then Notion Thief. So
if you are a blue deck, having lands untapped on the high tide combo turn is really important.
Yeah, that Deathrite Shaman actually hurt him this game because it gave Feline a perfectly fine snap target.
All right, so we'll see here. He can go for Brainstorm. He can go for Notion Thief.
Yeah, I think he has to assume that Notion Thief probably isn't going to work here, but he is going to go for it.
Unexpected, but probably okay. We see Feline pitching a Time Spiral to a Force of Will. And I'll say if you're a Deathblade player, if she's pitching a Time Spiral to a Force of Will, that's a really bad sign for you.
It looks like she has another one in her hand, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that means. She either has a Blue Sun or another Time Spiral in her
yeah.
hand, or something that's real bad news. All right, that's all his mana, and the defense grid is down. Lee is done making plays this game. Now we'll see whether or not Feline.
Yeah, now with defense grid and Lee totally tapped out, she's fine with giving him another 7 cards.
Yeah, she can tap. She taps for 10. Remember, she had 2 mana floating, which she used, so she's going to use 6 of that mana and untap 6 lands. So there'll be 4 floating on top of this Time Spiral. And once again, it's another chance for her to miss. Like I said, you try to resolve as few spirals as possible.
Yeah, but, again, missing when you're looking at 10 cards in your deck is pretty tough, yeah. And not only that, but you have to actually, it means that basically you're drawing 7 cards or 10 lands. It's like with all the cantrips and everything. So
it's hard.
Pretty good shape here for Feline. Both players are going to present and cut. What locks it up, Alejandro? Like, what, Cunning Wish here?
A Blue Sun, Merchant Scroll, because then she has Blue Sun.
Got it.
Merchant Scroll is enough. It does not take too much here.
Yeah, it looks like there is a Merchant Scroll in her hand. Again, Lee can't do anything here, so she's going to play open face to try to just make sure she doesn't make any mistakes.
This is something that we've talked about. Actually, one of the things that you can do, especially when you're kind of in the point where you've already won the game, and we both have talked about doing this, is once you think you are 100% to win and you have your, she has Lee completely tapped out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just start playing open face so that, I'll let my opponent know, yeah, it's going to take about 10 minutes. I'm going to play open face, so if at any point you want to stop playing this, you can see what's going on. But that means she believes she's 100% to win.
Yeah.
So going through motions, we see she's going to burn this Merchant Scroll, presumably for Blue Sun Zenith if she doesn't already have it. Could be for another High Tide if she actually just... it's probably just for a Blue Sun. Yeah, and there we go. Blue Sun, more card draw available. She's making sure she doesn't run out of mana, but her hand is pretty good at doing that. At some point here in the course of the combo, she'll cast a Cunning Wish for Turnabout to make extra mana.
And it looks like that's what got cast, right? Is that Turnabout?
Yeah, that is a Turnabout untapping her lands. That will generate even more mana. Preordained. So now at this point, she's just going through. She's verbally keeping track of her blue mana. Islands are tapping for 3, and she's rifting through cantrips. Just wants to find more High Tides, more mana sources.
So now every island taps for 4 mana, I believe.
Exactly.
And yep, we're going to see a giant Blue Sun Zenith here.
And this is probably the last Blue Sun that's going to target herself. After this, she's building up to see if she can get to 60 to target him. Alternatively, she can Brain Freeze him and then say go. She has 1 Brain Freeze in her sideboard. I don't know if she's been tracking Storm. She certainly has enough, can create enough Storm if she needs to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's at like Storm count 20 right now.
Well, if she isn't, she'll just get there.
Yeah, she will get there. Yeah, and I've seen her do this before during the rounds. Basically, splitting what matters, what doesn't matter, making sure she...
This pile of lands and counter spells, you're not using those.
So it looks like she has Merchant Scroll and Cunning Wish. So she should have the win here.
Absolutely.
She can get a Blue Sun Zenith, she can Cunning Wish or Brain Freeze and just kill him right on the spot.
Yep, she has 1 Turnabout main, 1 Turnabout board. She's going to go ahead and use Cunning Wish. And... she's really up. She's going to just getting mana. She's going to go ahead and go get this Turnabout. This Turnabout will create tons of mana. She taps for 8. To untap all her lands, gets 4 more bonus mana floating. At this point, I'm not sure how much extra is in her mana pool. She's just using more rituals. Going to snap to bounce Vendilion Click, untapping 2 lands. That too will create 4 more mana. Merchant Scroll again. For Blue Sun, I think this one's going at Lee.
So, yes.
Now, if you think this is a lot of mana, sometimes when you have all the candlesticks in, you make the play of Turnabout untapping your candlesticks.
I see
and
that
makes a lot of mana if you want to get down to it.
So Feline here has options. She could try to find the last Cunning Wish or Brain Freeze, but really no need there. So, yep, looks like she's going to Brain Freeze.
She's drawing the rest of her deck. Leaving
3 cards.
3 cards.
Which is perfect because she has top.
Yep, so the whole deck's in her hand. Quote unquote in her hand.
And looks like there's a High Tide.
Oh, hey, 2 more candlesticks.
And there's the Cunning Wish. So we can,
well,
Candelabra.
Yep, 2 Candelabras. The last High Tide is cast. Islands are now tapped for 5. Just going to go ahead and cast the top. And I think the Candelabras are actually just going to untap lands. Just going to go refine that Blue Sun Zenith with Merchant Scroll. These candlesticks should be good enough to create at least 63 mana. This deck's awesome. I don't know why. I don't know what's not. This is magic here. This is great.
I, for one, am really grateful for Lee to not conceding.
Yeah. I like she offers the cut with a 2-card deck, and Lee puts the top one on the bottom.
I feel like in situations like this, it should be
He's
legal.
Going to start drawing cards. All right. Well, draw 60. Let's see. Lee's counting cards off the top. This is...
It should be legal to boo players when they're doing this, I feel.
Hold on. He's drawing. He's correctly resolving the spell, as he should.
Fantastic.
It's for 64. He's making sure he's got enough cards. Counting. Hold on. Still resolving. And would you have it? It looks like he's going to run out of cards, and that will be the game for Feline Longmore.
Well, I, for one, am glad to have witnessed that.